Hello guys and welcome back to my new video. So since we have already completed the previous 8 sections, today we will be beginning with the second relief and ideally the most important one also, which is the specific performance of contract. This particular relief has the most number of provisions dedicated to it under SRA, ranging from section 9 till section 25. So just to explain what does the term specific performance of contract means or what is this particular relief. See, what I can explain you is see, there is this particular house. A has to sell this and he enters into a agreement to sell with B. Now, before moving further, I am going to clarify here that provisions of TPA will apply in this particular example, and this might not be technically correct, but this will definitely give you a very good glimpse of what this particular relief is about. So please take care of that, and I have already clarified the same now. Now I'll explain to you, and in this process also I will explain how the 2018 Amendment Act changed the way this particular relief is claimed in India. So there is an agreement to sale between A and B whereby A commits to sell this particular house to B. This particular fellow has paid him the earnest money, which we also call advance money, token amount, and in Hindi we call it bayana. So all this is done. Now agreement to sell means what? It is a commitment that A will sell. He hasn't yet. Ownership is still with A, but A has committed to transfer the ownership of his particular house to B. Now B had some family issues and he had to sell his good portion of property which he had, and he had to maybe pay off his debts. So he sold his own house. This is his house. He sold it off because he knew that this is a cheaper house, and after selling it and paying back his debts he would be able to afford it. So that's how the situation is. He has sold his house now. He is living at his relative's place. He has paid off his debts, and now suddenly A backs out and A refuses to sell this particular house to B. Now, what is the reason behind? That is irrelevant, because since there was a contractual relationship between A and B. So, they move to the court and B files a suit against A seeking specific performance of contract plus damages. Now, damages or compensation before 2018 amendment were the norm, and the relief of specific performance was an exception, meaning thereby the relief of specific performance was granted in rare cases as per the discretion of the court. However, now after 2018, the relief is what will be granted in majority cases, since it has now been made mandatory, and it is only in certain cases which have been enumerated in the Act that this particular relief can be disallowed. As far as damages or compensation are there, they were earlier also a remedy, they are right now also remedy, and in future also it will remain so. So okay, let's talk about 2018 pre-era, that is when the amendment had not taken place. So B files a suit against A, and the court, if the court finds that damages would be an apt remedy in this particular case. See, if the court thinks okay, he is not selling his property, right, but if he is ready to pay A the money, then what's the harm? B might pay him 50 lakh rupees, and A might just buy another house. That's easy. So before 2018, it was extremely unlikely that B would had to honor this particular contract, that is the agreement to sale. So the honoring of particular contracts like these, or even most of the contracts, the enforcing of contracts by the court was not, I would say, a day-to-day occurrence in the courts, and rather it was in very extreme cases that this relief was granted. It was also adversely impacting India's stand as a investment friendly country and business friendly country and all those kind of things. Now let us take up this example after 2018. I could have directly started up with the sections, but I deemed it necessary to explain this situation a bit first so that the bare act reading becomes easier. Now after 2018, specific performance of contract is the norm and damages or compensation are the exception. Okay. So based upon this changed law, I want to clarify here. Now, after 2018, the court will have to see whether any of the restrictions which now exist under the statute with respect to enforcement of contracts, specific performance of contracts, if any restriction which is enumerated in this particular act is applicable in this particular case, then the specific performance shall not be granted. However, if that is not the case, then it shall be granted. So assuming that no such restriction exists in the case, just for reference purposes, restrictions can be like whether the contract which is to be enforced deals with some, requires the court to continuously supervise, or whether substituted performance of the contract has been obtained, or whether the contract has been rescinded, or there has been novation, there has been alteration in the terms of the contract, etc. So all these things, if they don't exist, and for 2018, after 2018 amendment, since in this particular example no such circumstance exists, so now the remedy which will be granted by the court will be specific performance of the contract. B will have to sell this particular house to A, and then with respect to damages, I would like to add that since this act of B of breaching the contract earlier has caused A hassle, mental stress, plus he might have to had to face some insults or etc, whatever, so some damages might also be granted, which would be decided by the court depending on the facts and circumstances of the case. However, they would be quite less, which would have been granted otherwise. So that is how this relief exists. The amendment, the major impact of this amendment was the change in the nature of the specific performance of contract as a remedy. Earlier it was a discretionary relief. However, now it is a mandatory relief. It has to be granted by the court until and unless the restrictions mentioned do not exist. I mean, the restrictions mentioned exist. I hope this particular relief is clear, and I would just be reading one or two sections today because the video is already getting long, and I believe that this was an introductory video for this particular relief, and we need to give time to this one since it's a long one. So let's begin with section 9. Defenses respecting suit for relief based on contract, except as otherwise provided herein. Meaning that there might be some provisions in this act which suggest otherwise, as in what is written in this particular contract, provided herein, where any relief is claimed under this chapter as in chapter 2, which relates to specific performance of contracts. In respect of a contract, the person against whom the relief is claimed person against whom the relief is claimed in this particular example is A. So it is A who has breached, so that would be the case here. May plead by way of defense any ground which is available to him under any law relating to contract, as in, except for this particular relief also, if any other relief is available on this earth, in this particular case, the defenses, with respect to defenses, if that person has any defense other than those mentioned in this particular act, the person can seek those defenses. Just to add more to this study, there is section 3A which incorporates the contract law into SRA, mentioning that all the provisions of contract act or the reliefs, all the rights, etc., as in the contract act shall be incorporated in SRA as and when not mentioned. So this is a saving clause with respect to the same. And here also, this is also on similar lines. However, this is with respect to defenses in case of allegations of breach of contract. So section 9 has a narrower applicability as far as section 3A is concerned. 3A has a wider applicability. Its application ranges over the entire section, but section 9's applicability is with respect to section 9 to section 25 SRA only. Okay, one more section I would be covering today, section 10. The specific performance of a contract shall be enforced by the courts subject to the provisions contained in 11 clause 2, section 14 and 16. There are other provisions also, so these restrictions are not really exhaustive, and as I told you, this section makes the particular relief mandatory. Now let's read the older section as given in the footnotes. Cases in which specific performance of contract is enforceable, except as otherwise provided in this chapter, the specific performance of a contract may meaning that the court has discretion, it is optional, may in the discretion of the court be enforced when there exists no standard for ascertaining the actual damage caused by the non-performance. Yet again, if there are standards to determine the actual damage caused, and rather in simpler words, if damages would be apt remedy for the case, then this particular relief of specific performance would be granted. Secondly, when the act agreed to be done is such that compensation in money for its non-performance would not afford adequate relief. So since reading these two, it becomes clear that earlier money was considered to be a good replacement of enforcement of a contract. However, that's not the particular case now, and I would say that it's a welcome change in the law, because otherwise it was difficult for businesses to enforce the contractual obligations, and damages is always definitely not the apt remedy. So that's it for today's class, and I hope that you will all watch my video, appreciate it, and you will also comment and give me good feedback or even bad. I would welcome any kind of feedback which helps me in improving. And please subscribe to my channel, like my videos and watch my videos. Thank you so much.